I am Anton Golub, and today I'm here with my co-host, Dr. Demetrios Zamboglou. Enjoy the show, have a blast, and you're going to absolutely love it.
So geopolitical matters, where goods are coming from, the Red Sea versus another direction, insurance costs for shipping increase. So these are kind of risks you look at. We even, in some commodities, we even look at the risk of disease, right? So one of the reasons I like the banana example, there is some commodities that are very risky in transit.
And what kind of returns do you see in general? Let's say on your portfolio, because we
Yeah.
mentioned a specific example.
So our annual returns to investors today average at 23.39%.
That's a lot, yeah.
Right, and our tenors are very short, 3 to 6 months. Right. So in trade finance, you normally have a fixed rate, and especially in Islamic finance, we call it murabaha contracts. So fine, you are buying a shipment, you're selling a shipment of containers. I will add our profit rate, and then that becomes what you would call an interest rate. So I see that the stablecoin action will begin more with the investors, because adoption in cryptocurrencies is very high in Oman, relative to the GCC. But businesses wanting to settle with stablecoins, I think this will mature in the UAE extremely quickly.
Also, there is some excessive wealth in the region as well. I mean, there has been a lot of developments. You guys like to work, you guys like to build, you have an entrepreneurial passion. And you mentioned even before the chat that some people went into hotels, and there is a lot of this kind of tourism which is flourishing in the country.
So first, very happy to have you on the show. So welcome to blockCAST show. And really happy that today is actually on a special episode, because we have our first international guest. So the vision of blockCAST is to bring top 50 crypto and fintech leaders in the region. We're so far mostly focused on Dubai and Abu Dhabi. So welcome to the show, Mohammed. Really a pleasure, and thank you for joining, and looking forward to have a blast discussion.
Thank you guys for having me. And hey, I've been a fan of the show for a while, so it's kind of exciting being here,
Awesome, actually.
Yeah.
So you told me in the preparation for the show that actually, so you and I we actually go back for a while. We met each other a few years ago, and you told me that we should discuss it, how we met. And I was surprised that you actually remember how we met. So how did we meet actually, if from your own words,
So I remember that year, it was 2021.
Yes.
A gaming platform here invited me to attend this event that was blockchain related. I can't remember the name of the event itself, but it was like a small expo. It was one of those first few events in Dubai that were, all Web3 related. And that was considered early. In fact, when I think back, Dubai has come a long way since 2021 to today, right? I bumped into you there, and you had, I think at the time you were presenting like hair.
Oh, no, I think it was a bit later. It was with the market maker, with Fintech, actually.
Yes.
Okay, with the market maker.
Yes. And you were there, and we got chatting, and, we hit it off. And you told me that you snuck in a photo also, so, I need to get that photo that you have.
I like to, have some evidence,
Memorabilia.
Memorabilia, actually. So really happy to have you here. And indeed, I remember we met, it was quite an early days. I think it was also quite early days for you with Mamun.
Yes.
I think also for the audience, maybe if you can share a little bit where you come from.
All right.
What are you working on? What keeps you busy now? And then we can, Demetrios, I think we can then take it forward.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
So, well, I'm from the Sultanate of Oman, so just across the border from the UAE. So, I'm glad we qualify as first international guest on the show, right?
Yeah.
And if you know Oman, it's a very beautiful country. I mean, we have all the seasons in different locations of the country, so we're famous for our ecotourism and adventure tourism and all of that. And we're facing the Indian Ocean, so it's a great place to visit if you're ever visiting. Yeah. Now, at the time, around 2021, 2022, we had just started Mamun. We were just a fintech technology play at the time. We had developed our own middleware that essentially allowed corporations or even other startups to build fintech use cases extremely quickly.
So you were like an infrastructure provider in the early days.
Exactly. And it's our own proprietary technology. Me and my partners had met in the telecom industry. Me and my brother Saleh were subcontractors to Ooredoo Telecom. And that's where we met our third co-founder, Ahmed, who's the CTO. He was a senior architect there, and technically he was the client. So
you were all engineers? You studied engineering?
we were more like, my background is more in business and marketing.
Okay.
For many years I worked in media, so I was more into media planning and strategy. My brother Saleh is more of the legal finance banking guy in the team. Ahmed is a pure tech guy who worked in, he was employee number 14 at Nawras Telecom, which then became Ooredoo Telecom in Oman when Ooredoo started acquiring different telco operators around the world. He had a lot of experience. He had built some very intelligent systems. And I spent 3 years convincing the dude, leave this corporate world. Come, let's start something of our own. I spent 3 years whispering in his ear like a little devil. Until maybe it was 2019, he gives me a call. Mohammed, I had enough of this place. I want to move on. I want to start something of my own. Come on, let's have that meeting now. And that's when we had that meeting. And I can never forget it. It was at this particular coffee shop. I remember I was facing some kids' play section, and that's when we all sat and decided, how can we create embedded finance and fintech infrastructure systems that are as scalable as the one that we used to operate in a telco environment? Because the infrastructure in a telco is no different from banks also. So that really was our foot in the door, and we learned a lot from that experience. And that's when we built the Mamun sort of infrastructural layer at the time.
Sorry to interrupt you. Can you tell what does Mamun mean actually?
Wow. So I love naming stuff, right? Being a brand guy. And Mamun was a tough nut to crack. And we wanted a name for the company that was one word, easy to pronounce by Arabs and by expats. The pronunciation wouldn't change much. And I remember I was just going up the stairs in my mom's house, and then I remembered the name of one of our relatives, and his name is Mamun. And it denotes trust. So initially it means trust. But I really fell in love with the name even more when I had to sort of cross-check the name, and I went online, and I realized that there was a Khalifa during the Abbasid era in Iraq who created the House of Wisdom. This was the height of what was known as the golden Islamic era in science, math, heck, even finance. It was a time of prosperity. Great minds from east to west were coming to the House of Wisdom to invent and create things such as the scientific method was developed in the House of Wisdom. So that, with us being a Sharia compliant provider in finance, we felt that this name was well suited for us, and we went for it. So it means trust, but also it has a sort of background story to that era in Islam, and he was a great known leader to have really done a lot and contributed a lot to sciences. Nice. So that really made me fall in love with the name.
Awesome, very good. And tell us then the story from an infrastructure provider to today leading Web 2, Web 3 borrowing and lending platform.
So that's the fun part. I think when you start, you don't know where the journey will take you, right? And you're still also trying to figure yourself out. So we had this incredible technology for a lot of banks and partners we spoke to at the time. It is ahead of its time for a startup from Oman, really, right? And we constantly got underestimated. But whenever we went to the banks and we had like potential partners like third-party systems or merchants that we could deliver, say, embedded finance solutions to, using our middleware or our infrastructure layer, the banks and the finance companies, what is this voodoo you guys are talking about? What is this embedded finance? Before this term was even popularized at the time, right? They used to think that we are crazy. This black magic. No, please leave us alone. We don't do this alternative data, credit scoring. No, this is not for us. Now, this was a bit of a problem because to us, the mission was to be able to deliver really lightweight, closed-loop credit products within third-party systems. And then one day it hit us that Oman had just released a crowdfunding regulatory framework.
Okay.
And when I remember we were reading through the regulations and we're like, hey, are we reading this right? Because the regulations were extremely progressive. Extremely progressive in a sense, it's progressive on a global level, let alone a regional level. And how? Progressive in the sense you could onboard investors from anywhere in the world, be it retail or institutional, and deploy anywhere in the world. Of course, deploying is easier said than done because each jurisdiction has some teething aspects of it, right? And that's where we realized we don't need banks as finance partners now. Now we are the liquidity providers. And we went from an embedded finance or lending proposition to also a wealth product. And that's when we launched, and that was around, this kind of pivot happened in October 2023.
Okay.
So it's been a decent 24 months since then.
Yeah.
And growth has been great. I mean, we're now expanding into Bahrain and the UAE. And the credit gap for SMEs in the region is no different, be it Oman, Bahrain, Saudi.
So in simple terms, what does the company do?
We provide trade finance for SMEs.
Only institutional, no retail.
In terms of financing to retail customers?
Yes.
No. In fact, we are not fans of retail credit products for reasons such as what we see today in the buy now, pay later space. Why do you need to own a 60-inch flat screen? Yeah, if you can't afford it, it's okay. 24-inch. For me, consumer lending just encourages bad credit habits to consumers. I think consumers today need more wealth products, less opportunities for taking unnecessary finance or loans for that matter. So yes, only businesses. We're a pure B2B provider.
And can you expand what kind of process did you have to go through in Oman to become a platform that they can raise capital? I think from what I understand, you can raise it also from retail and from institutionals.
Yeah.
It was the licensing process. Like, how did that look like actually to get Mamun to?
So the regulation is under the Financial Services Authority in Oman, which is they don't get enough credit. A very, very progressive and very lean regulator.
Yeah.
In fact, Oman's stock market is one of the easiest to onboard an international investor in the GCC.
Yeah.
They just don't advertise that enough or well enough. Now, the regulation, of course, they needed to see that you have the capital requirements. They needed to see, luckily the FSA was also a customer of our technology. That helped. They knew us. They understood that we have the capabilities, the in-house capabilities.
Yeah.
So the licensing was actually quite expedited. They did issue several licenses for several players like us, but most of them have been pulled out because none of them has been effective in delivering and growing the securitization book, right? Or the actually issuing finance to investors, to businesses. Since then, our lending book has grown to over $10 million US, and we hope to add another $20 million this year. Through different markets and in Oman.
Yeah.
So that was, I think with time we've proven to regulators in the market that we are very committed to actually delivering this. There's others who have used the license to just arbitrage from other jurisdictions, but not necessarily to actually deliver the actual service in the country.
Okay, got it, understood.
I was going to say Oman was also in my agenda in 2020 when I was looking about expansion in the region.
That was with CFI back in the day, yeah?
Yes, it was with CFI, and then they ended up doing a very big opening there.
Yes. I still see there are billboards everywhere in the streets. Yes.
So yes, it was in the agenda, and also there is some excessive wealth in the region as well. I mean, there has been a lot of developments. You guys like to work, you guys like to build, you have an entrepreneurial passion. And you mentioned even before the chat that some people went into hotels, and there is a lot of this kind of tourism which is flourishing in the country. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about this as well.
Well, Oman, you have to understand that Oman is a very old country, right? I'm talking about thousands of years of history, right? And with that, historically, we as a people have been internationally exposed. When the United States became a country, we actually sent an ambassador with gifts and told them, hey, welcome to the club, you know, right? So we're that old, right? And because of our unique geography, we've always had a horizontal philosophy for development. So we're not a vertical country. We're horizontal in terms of how we deliver infrastructure and development. And this is really the wisdom of His Majesty. And today, we're really positioning ourselves very strongly in the tourism space. Because we have all the elements. If you want to see what you'd see in Maldives, you want to see whales, you want to swim with dolphins, you want to hang out with turtles, you'd be very surprised. I remember a few years ago, there was a really great event, and a few friends from Dubai also joined me. It was the Red Bull Cliff Diving Championships. You go on a cliff and you dive into a wadi, right? And you don't know there is rocks, there is no rocks. It's a very scary experience. But this is, Oman is the kind of place where you could do things like that.
I hope you didn't jump as well.
No. I was
safe distance.
I was just a spectator there with my Virgin Margarita, just watching, you know.
Right. But why Virgin Margarita?
Just
to make sure you don't jump.
Just for the sake of the audience. My mom could be watching.
And tell us now, you are more often here in UAE. You mentioned also expansion in Bahrain.
Yes.
We had a few guests previously, for instance, Talal from CoinMina, who mentioned that Bahrain was very early on, very strong in innovative financial regulation, right?
I think they're still very
strong, yeah. So can you tell us a little bit more? I mean, I'm always happy to see you when you come here into UAE. How do your plans look like? And maybe you can also expand on some interesting partnerships that you closed recently in UAE.
Absolutely. I'll start with Bahrain.
Okay.
Bahrain has a special place in my heart. A few years ago, I was mentoring one of their ecosystem programs, mentoring some university students. And today, in Bahrain, we are now becoming commercially operational, but we have a good, decent number of people from the team who are Bahrainis, working and operating from Bahrain. I made this interesting discovery about talent in Bahrain, extremely talented. You see, Bahrain continues to be, of course, wholesale banking, and the banking sector is well known, right? And what they've been doing in Fintech, the sector. But Bahrain is also houses the headquarters of a lot of insurance companies. So for a couple of decades now, the Bahraini government has always emphasized the study and the discipline of actuarial science. So every university in Bahrain has actuarial science programs. Me, up to that point, I didn't even know what is actuarial science. I had to look it up.
It's a hard bachelor for sure.
Yeah. And then I realized the government was encouraging actuarial science so that they could continue supplying the insurance industry for underwriting with talent. However, actuarial scientists are perfectly suited for our sector, be it fintech, be it finance risk, credit risk, because they have the best of both worlds, the science of the math and statistics, but they can easily delve into working with data. So this talent pool is extremely captive. And if you ask me, I think it's very underutilized in Bahrain. So today, we have 3 members of the team who are all actuarial scientists as part of our sort of underwriting and credit risk and developing our models. And now we're commercially operational in Bahrain. And coming to the UAE, well, naturally, I'm just across the border. I'm looking at the UAE and what's happening in the Web3 space. And I just sit there drooling, and this framework, this regulation is out and it's extremely progressive. I don't need to lecture anyone about it. And at the speed that it was happening. And, I didn't get into Web3 early. It was actually a few friends of mine in 2020. They did like an online Zoom call intervention. They were all active, they were trading NFTs, buying, selling. They're all involved in different industries. And every few months, we do like a catch-up call on Zoom because we're all geographically dispersed. Some of us are in Kenya, some are in Dubai, some are in Canada. So we're just catching up, a bunch of guys, catching up. That day, they were like, Mohammed, get on the call. And they all attacked me. Mohammed, you're doing fintech, but you're doing nothing in Web3. What's wrong with you, brother? They shamed me, man, And I was like, you know what? They're right. And it's easy for a lot of players in the fintech space to be so distracted with what they're doing, not realizing what are the, current and future implications. I definitely, as a fintech, don't want to be left behind and become traditional. The same way, us fintechs were making fun of banks many years ago, right? So I started paying attention, right? And then I started my journey and learning. Now, a few years in, now that we've discovered our market product fit, it is becoming very clear and apparent that my partner Ahmed, he likes to say this about blockchain. He says, why do you need a bazooka to kill a fly? Right? And he's right. Sometimes the technology is overkill, but it really comes down to what is the use case. And if the use case is valid, then you have something. And in some instances, the use case may not necessarily require a smart contract or blockchain technologies. But I think now the use cases are becoming very clear. And for us, what really excites us is, if I was just to say on Mamun, if I was to accept stablecoins as a means of investment in the platform, I am reducing the retail investor's transactional cost on my platform when he's moving money through our platform. I'm reducing that cost by maybe 20 to 30% by simply just removing the bank rails, right? Also, forget the efficiency in terms of speed. So that's one area we're looking at, which we partnered with Fuse to do that here in the UAE, and we appreciate that they do a lot of the heavy lifting from the infrastructure perspective. And we get to actually just focus on our customers.
Yes. So, sorry to interrupt you. So in practice, that would mean that your customer could send stablecoins.
Exactly.
Fuse as a partner would process that, and then the funds would land on your platform as an investment, and then you could deploy it.
Yes, it would convert into the fiat. Yeah. And they make the investment, and then the investor could also later, when he's exiting, could choose whether to exit with stablecoin or fiat, depending on where he is withdrawing the funds to. It could be a wallet, an eKYC wallet, or it could be a bank account for that matter. All right.
Okay. Awesome.
And then on the other hand, because we do a lot of trade finance, there's a lot of cross-border transactions, and that space has a lot of inefficiencies. A lot of when we talk about SMEs, people immediately go to a place in their mind that SMEs, companies that are doing, turnover of $1 million to 5 million dirhams. No, an SME could be a company doing 50 million dirhams turnover a year. And they still have challenges and efficiencies in making money appear to their suppliers in different jurisdictions across the world, speed, and cost. If you've worked in the import-export space and you've had to go through the process of creating an LC at a bank, you will know what I mean. One apostrophe in the LC document, the document will need to physically fly from here to China and back, and that correction is made. These inefficiencies are great for multi-million-dollar deals for large oil and gas companies, but not necessarily for SMEs who just need to get the job done, right? So this is another area that we're looking at. Another area that really excites me today is real-world assets, because essentially that's the place we operate, right? All our deals are real-world economy transactions. Shipment of bananas from India to Oman or Dubai. And trade finance tends to be always in demand, always
But
stable.
what do you mean by real world assets? Is it the tracking of the physical assets? Is it real estate buildings? Is it a factory? Is it energy?
It's the
For
actual
you-
physical goods.
Yeah, but for you guys, what is real world assets?
It's the actual investments that we make in these transactions. So a shipment of bananas, for example.
Okay, but what will interest you? Because everything can be real world assets.
Absolutely. Even I joke around. I want to tokenize my soul. I don't know if that's monetizable, but anyway.
We can buy some tokens. But for you guys, what is the specialty? Is it energy? Is it real estate? Is it farming? Is it mining? Is it?
So it's FMCG goods is around 50% of our portfolio.
Okay.
We see a lot in manufacturing, in services also, but services will normally involve the actual underlining security, which could be invoices or purchase orders, right, from a B2B transaction. A furniture supplier supplying a large retail brand, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So to us, these are what we would call real economy stuff, right? Not derivatives, and it's an actual goods being exchanged. And to us, this is real economy, and that these could be securitized as an instrument.
So like a big farmer will come and talk to you guys about his bananas, his fruits, and how does this project start?
So I'll give you an example.
Please,
I'll use the banana use case.
Yeah.
So we had this entrepreneur.
You know, banana is the number one most sold good in Walmart in the US.
Yeah, it's
Believe it or
Yeah,
not.
no, yeah.
bananas are surprisingly lucrative also.
Yes.
And I think there was a few months ago there was a huge shortage in the UK, and they get most of their bananas from Ecuador. While it's in the Middle East, we get our bananas from Ecuador, and a lot of it comes also from India. Now, this entrepreneur, we used to, the cargo company he used to work for was being financed by us. And this young man, and these are the wonderful stories I enjoy in my business, because I've been there. I've been an SME for the last 20 years. I've been rejected. I've lost opportunities simply because I couldn't access finance. So I've lived the problem, and one of the reasons I think we're successful is we can really relate with a lot of our clients when we work with them. And he tells us, look, guys, I have a great buyer, and the buyer happened to be one of the top 3 fruit and vegetable distributors. And the buyer is willing to buy from me. I want to become their banana supplier. But he didn't have a commercial registration at the time. We told him, create one. We really believed in him, that he had the experience to move goods and clear it. And the de-risking is through the buyer anyway, not necessarily him. So he met us halfway, and the buyer meets us halfway. Because when we look at a transaction, we look at buyer and seller. So we financed his first shipment. Since then, we have financed maybe 20 shipments of bananas, of actual containers of bananas coming to port, getting cleared, going to the distributor, getting sold on various platforms. I think in a few months, 1 in every 10 bananas in Oman would have been financed by us.
Nice.
And the yield is very good. 9% in 4-5 months is pretty decent.
Mohammed, you mentioned, actually, you talked about a lot of how you de-risk the situation when you finance such deals. Can you expand a little bit more on the yield side, on the return side? Like, how does that look like? How does it compare to other asset classes? And how do risk also, like from your perspective, differ actually?
Right. So in trade finance, you normally have a fixed rate, and especially in Islamic finance, we call it murabaha contracts. So fine, you are buying a shipment, you're selling a shipment of containers.
Yep.
I will add our profit rate, and then that becomes what you would call an interest rate, right? Okay. But it has no hidden compounded interests. So that's the kind of key between.
It's kind of like a fee more than an interest. Actually,
yes, yes. A lot of people criticize, oh, there's no difference. Actually, there is a difference, and I had to learn that myself. I used to be one of those people who say there's no difference, but it is in the transparency of the transaction, and that is where the difference is in Islamic finance versus a conventional finance, right? And we look at, as I said, when we do risk assessment, we look at buyer, seller. We pay attention to geopolitical scenarios, especially now recently during the summer. There was potential risk with the travel industry, right? But a lot of the travel operators or ticketing businesses were compensated by the airlines. So there was their pockets did not take a hit, and hopefully the situation recovers and everybody's okay. So geopolitical matters, where goods are coming from, the Red Sea versus another direction, insurance costs for shipping increase. So these are kind of risks you look at. We even, in some commodities, we even look at the risk of disease, right? So one of the reasons I like the banana example, there is some commodities that are very risky in transit. Bananas, due to its nature, it actually ripens in transit. So it has very low risk of anything really going wrong with the goods. Unlike, say, risky goods like strawberries, and if the supply is inexperienced with strawberry or blueberries, then that could be a problem.
And what kind of returns do you see in general? Let's say on your portfolio, because we mentioned a specific example.
So our annual returns to investors today average at 23.39%.
That's a lot, yeah.
Right, and our tenors are very short, 3 to 6 months. So, and our cash retention rate with investors has been like at 95, 97%. So they keep rolling from one transaction to the other. So accumulatively, the returns have averaged at 23, but we see investors who are aged in our network or in our platform who have now achieved over 50% in returns. And this is like in under 24 months. So we like to say that is reasonably industry benchmark, but it's also good, right? Yeah. And we indirectly manage risk for investors. We don't let investors expose themselves to a single transaction. We like them to have a spread. So even if I think our risk exposure from our 10M so far is around just less than 1.2%. Wow. So our risk mitigation practices and underwriting has been good. So we're very happy with that, and we are always looking for ways to improve it.
You mentioned fiat and you mentioned stable coins. Is stable coins, are your customers settling in stable coins now, or they're still using traditional fiat? Are you seeing this percentage increasing?
So I see that the stablecoin action will begin more with the investors, because adoption in cryptocurrencies is very high in Oman relative to the GCC. But businesses wanting to settle with stablecoins, I think this will mature in the UAE extremely quickly. So I'll give you a little story I had yesterday. I was in a meeting with a traditional company in Dira. He does document processing, visas, setting up companies. So I tried my luck. I asked him, do customers want to pay with stable coins or cryptocurrencies? He says, yes, Mohammed, a lot. Do you know a company that can help me accept? I was very surprised, because this is, document clearing, very traditional business in Dira, old Dira, right? I think it was, where was I? Souq Naif area. And he was actually telling me that the demand is very, very high. And I told him who. And then he gave me a bunch of nationalities, right? Because he processes for a lot of nationalities. So the appetite, I think we're going to see a situation where more businesses, traditional here, especially here in the UAE, where they will hold in their accounts and treasury stablecoins and other crypto assets, wherein they'll be accepting payments in the form of cryptocurrencies or digital assets or stablecoins for that matter. And more of them will start settling using digital assets or stable coins. So in the UAE, I think this is becoming a very serious reality that you just cannot ignore. And a lot of businesses are going to be very active. I think in 2 years, 3 out of every business in the UAE will be holding some kind of stable coins or settling in stable coins or other means.
Mohammed, I know that you're very keen, always following the news that's happening in the crypto industry.
Right.
And lately we see, for instance, JP Morgan wanting to launch an internal deposit token. We're hearing news about Walmart, Amazon, also looking to launch their, again, internal, let's say, stablecoins. Circle has IPO'd recently. What I wanted to ask you is, from what you see is in Oman, but also in the region, what is the predominant stablecoin at the moment? Is it USDT? Is it USDC? Here in the UAE, we have AED stablecoin. So what do you see out there in the market, in the region? What is the preferred method, both among the investors, let's say it like that, but also among the SMEs who are adopting such technology?
All right, so I am yet to have the data on SMEs who are adopting the technology from a stablecoin perspective, but I will talk about investors. So a lot of our investors are extremely, on our platform, our users are extremely active in digital assets. I write this newsletter called Souk Analyst, and once every other year we do a survey on Oman digital asset adoption. So I'm going to reference what I've observed there from respondents. Definitely USDT seems to be the dominant in the region. In all these chat groups, the surveys, USDT seems to be
they have the early advantage.
The go-to, right? Very rare do I hear, USDC coming in,
or even any other, right, as well.
But interesting on Oman particularly, in the survey, XRP. Now I don't know if we can classify XRP as a stable coin, but XRP has a lot of holders in Oman, a lot, like obviously
so
a lot.
Maybe RLUSD will be picking up.
Exactly. So that was very. And for the love of God, I don't know how this happened when XRP launched many years ago. Just adoption and a lot of people in Oman just invested in the token, and a lot of them are maxis. They're really holding on to it, and what you see today in the news really has them all excited, right? So even in my social media, I talk about XRP a lot because a lot of my followers are people who are holding XRP. So I think XRP has some interesting potential. And you can see them doing all the right moves here in the UAE also.
Yes.
All right.
Mohammed, wanted to actually ask you is that what is the leading crypto service provider in Oman? Because it's very interesting when we talked about your partnerships, you mentioned that you partnered up with Fuse, which are also very dear friends of ours. But wanted to ask you if you can, for the audience, I think it would be very interesting. Can you explain or describe a little bit the crypto ecosystem in Oman? I think that would be very interesting.
So we are still playing catch up in Oman. So we have no regulatory framework whatsoever at the time being. You can register as a VASP with the Financial Services Authority, like a kind of prequel to formal regulatory frameworks. All right. I had the opportunity to give feedback on the consultation paper quite some time ago. So potentially the horizon is maybe towards the end of this year for our regulation. But Oman is a very cautious town. We like to see how things settle and mature, and we learn from others. So there are no players, truly speaking, right? Of course, if you were to ask me what is the number one exchange, for example, that's being used by I calculate 100,000 people. Now our population, we're around 3 million nationals, total 5 million. According to my survey, and it's a bit outdated now, at least 100,000 Omanis are active holders and investors, with at least over 50 million Omani riyals deployed as investments in cryptocurrency. So 50 million Omani riyals, that's around maybe shy of $150 million, something with that range. So relative to our population, that's a bit significant, right? And because there is no regulatory framework as of yet, it does not mean that the Omani investor and consumer is not active. So the scene is significant. It's way ahead of the environment itself. From if you're talking about is Oman a great place to acquire users, if you're an exchange or a platform, absolutely, absolutely. And if you could, be able to service locally, then that really would make a difference.
Yes.
I think Oman is right there, especially in terms of the nationals population. Oman is number 2 after Saudi Arabia. Right? So Binance is huge. For some reason, Kraken is very popular.
Okay.
It showed up in our survey as top 3, but definitely Binance.
Okay.
But we haven't seen a local Omanian exchange like the one we've seen with Rain in Bahrain.
Yes. Remember.
Yeah.
Why is that, do you think?
It's the lack of clarity in regulation. That plays a role, right? It plays a role. And I think that we have maybe a player, Easy Coin.
Easy coin. Yeah.
And they're domiciled in another jurisdiction, but the founders are Omanis. And it's the only one that's operating within the country. But predominantly it's the mainstream exchanges that own the crypto Omani wallets today, I would say, as mentioned, Binance, Kraken, and others.
But do you believe if one local exchange opened there, it will take a very big market share because of the tradition, the language, the people, the local presence?
Absolutely. So one of the things I'm a big fan of watching user behavior. So one of the things I noticed in some of the different channels I'm on, a lot of Arabs are using Binance, but they're using the Arabic interface.
Okay, correct.
And what I find fascinating, when you look at crypto content, education or information or awareness, all the high quality content is in English. I'm a big advocate of the huge gap on Arabic content relative to some brands that are building presences in the Middle East. It's a critique of mine, actually. So yes, if you're servicing, if you're speaking the language, and I think the larger opportunities are the rest who have not been onboarded into investing in digital assets or participating in the Web3 economy. So yeah, absolutely. A local exchange that serves based on the market need would do reasonably well. Yeah.
Maybe to dive a bit more into the topic of the habits in Oman, because you and I have very often conversations with you and your brother about DeFi.
Right.
So how does DeFi stack up in Oman? Do people use wallets? Do they use protocols? How is the habits, let's say, of people in Oman, of the crypto users?
Again, when I talk about these habits, I'm very much focused on individuals, because institutionally nobody's really doing something, right? Because nobody can do anything without clarity on regulation, right? So the habits are a mixed bag, right? Yeah, I see a lot of chatter on meme coins, of course.
Okay.
Of course, XRP, as I mentioned, really sticks out for me.
Yeah.
I think in the GCC, probably Omanis are the largest GCC nationals invested in XRP. From a
After this chat, maybe
population.
you should become the XRP ambassador.
You can be the ambassador.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to meeting them. I'm trying to make arrangements here in Dubai to see them and have a conversation, because there's quite a bit we could be doing.
Yes.
Interestingly enough, one of the banks many years ago did partner with XRP for international remittances. I'd like to avoid mentioning the name of this bank.
Many banks have partnered with XRP.
But this particular bank in Oman,
not in Oman.
yeah, I'm talking about Oman specifically, has not really properly gone to market with it.
Okay.
Right? I think it was like one of those tick boxes. It looked good at the time, but it's sort of like, banks and telcos, it's shiny object syndrome kind of thing, right? So they will always stick to their core business.
Yes.
Right? But I think they didn't realize the opportunity from a remittance perspective, what an upside that would have for them as a bank. So it's a mixed bag, Anton. It's hard for me to say what DeFi protocols people are looking at using. Ethereum has a fan base, but there's an aspect of Oman we didn't discuss. So sure, we're behind in the regulatory frameworks. But Oman is one of the leading mining hubs in the GCC, right?
Tell us
I
more.
mean, even the large operators out of Abu Dhabi and others have significant investments in Salalah in the south.
Okay.
Is it because the electricity is cheap? What is the reason?
A combination of cheap, well, cheaper maybe, incentives, free zones. Also, the reason I mentioned the south, there's a lot of opportunity. There's Oman is pushing the envelope in clean energy and alternative energy. So there's a lot of mining operations, significant in size, in Oman today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so as a mining hub, the government has really well positioned us to intercept these opportunities. And today the number of operations are here. We're talking about hundreds of millions of US dollars. Over $1 billion has been invested in Oman mining operations. Players that you are very well aware of and know.
The government is thinking about doing a strategic Bitcoin reserve. How far they are willing to take it? Maybe
We're pushing the boundary.
You got us very excited now.
Yeah, you see, this is the thing is, right? I get you excited and then I unexcite you a little bit, right? So whilst we have this growing mining industry,
Yes.
it's completely disconnected from the financial services sector.
No.
Do you see?
Yeah.
Because we
Because
don't have...
I'm thinking now, the government is helping expand on mining, which is phenomenal. I mean, I'm writing also an article on strategic reserves about countries. Hopefully it will be out one of these days. So I said, oh my God, they have both the pieces. Maybe if they link them together.
Tell me about it, man.
It makes sense.
Tell me about it, right?
So they can have a strategic Bitcoin reserve. We've seen the US now invested heavily on this strategic Bitcoin reserve.
Absolutely. And many other nations are following suit, right? But until you have regulatory clarity, the financial sector will not know how to operate. And everybody is being a bit safe here, right? So I think once that's done, we're going to see that marriage happen. And it could be Oman's upside.
For sure.
For sure.
And it's interesting, you know, I never thought of it from a strategic reserve perspective.
It makes sense. I mean, you have a country, it has a reserve. Part of that reserve has to be allocated in digital assets. You're mining Bitcoins.
You are one of the strongest.
So you have all the pieces.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think all these pieces will eventually converge. And if anybody from, policymakers in Oman is listening today, hey, this guy just made a very good point.
I mean, I think even in this region they're starting as well, even in countries similar to my country, in Cyprus, there is some discussions as well. I think strategic Bitcoin reserve with this new administration in the US is a very hot topic.
Yeah, and I think it has benefited the whole industry that we have the global power, superpower like US, opening up with the new administration. Opening up maybe a bit a lot with the Trump coin, but opening up also maybe in the right way.
we can stick on Bitcoin.
we can move more towards the, I'm just
maybe Ethereum, maybe XRP.
So, but I think also it provides a bit more of a clarity and maybe a bit more of a validation and confirmation for others.
I think the activation point is the fact that a lot of currencies are pegged to the US dollar.
Yes.
So if you're pegged to the US dollar now, the US dollar is telling you, hey, I'm also into something else now. That is a moment of reflection for many governments around the world to start thinking. What if the US dollar is phased out by a new kind of US dollar that is digital? Where does that put central banks that are pegged to the US dollar around the world? In what position? That could be a kind of US dollar rug pull in a way, right? Like suddenly, oh no, khalas, US dollar, forget about it. Now it's some kind of new digital US dollar or some kind of stable coin.
I mean, if I think about it, I will think about it a little bit different. I will say that governments have invested heavily in gold.
Yes.
Now gold 2.0 is Bitcoin. Maybe they need to put some investments there. So then it makes it so much easier for them. What is Bitcoin is like digital gold.
Absolutely.
You mine it similarly on a digital format, of course, and you have it and you store it. It's something like digital gold, the gold 2.0.
I have this analogy whenever I'm explaining Bitcoin to an auntie or something. Why you like gold, auntie? She's like, it's safe haven, store of value. Also, Mohammed, look at gold, it's shiny, it's pretty. But reality is, gold has zero industrial function today. I mean, hardly any, right? It's just that, we humans decided a long time ago that this is, it's pretty, it's shiny, and it's rare to find. Let's use it as, as a kind of currency or a store of value. And then suddenly, in the last 15 years, 10,000 years of human evolution, right? When it comes to like gold, just happened with Bitcoin in 15 years. Yeah. And this is the system shock. A lot of people are still confused. But you look at Bitcoin, it's a payment infrastructure. It has functionalities way beyond gold. So I find it sometimes ridiculous needing to explain it. And people should really be careful. Like, you really need to spend the time in
the best definition I've heard in the last year or so was the currency of the AI.
Yeah.
Very good, very strong.
So AI will not deal on stablecoins because they shouldn't trust humans.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the currency of the AI. So if you were an AI to transact with another AI, most likely you'll be using Bitcoin.
Yeah,
Come back, get a bank account, so why not with the wallets? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mohammed, we spoke about using the traditional rails to make investments, to create value. We talked about stablecoins as the new digital way of managing your wealth, your cash positions, you making investments. Likewise, we're touching upon as well on Bitcoin and its future in the region and globally. I have to now ask the provocative question. CBDCs, where do you stand there? Where do you see it? So central bank digital currencies. Where do you see, or do you see its role in the future? Because we are kind of like touching of all of these digital assets, currencies, but we are not talking about the one that the governmental bodies are looking at.
Yeah, the elephant in the room.
Yes.
Okay. This is where I hate blockchain technologies, right?
Oh, we are taking a wrong turn now.
Okay. The idea, I think one of the, Saleh was in Japan recently.
Yep.
And he came back, like, Mohammed, they love cash over there. It's a lot of cash. It's like, okay, maybe they're old school like that. The Japanese, they're modern and traditional. But I think the appeal of cash is no different from when you are enjoying the privacy offered by Bitcoin and others, right? So then you think with CBDCs, the idea that my money is programmable, that you could program my money. Imagine the health department says Mohammed smokes too much cigarettes, so he can't use his money to buy cigarettes. That to me is I don't know, and kind of takes us away from the concept of DeFi, right? So there I have a mixed opinion of how central banks would use CBDCs, because sure, it's efficient for whatever reasons, but it's also a great surveillance tool, right? For them and for me as a person, as an individual, this one makes me worry a little bit.
Okay. So on the retail side, you don't really see it. How do you feel about among the institutions, the banks, as some way to use it?
Yes, if it helps onboard financial institutions and banks onto the wider ecosystem, then there is benefit to there, right? Because at the end of the day, even for me as a business or as a B2B, or even as Mamun as a platform, that will be useful to me, right? And it's great in terms of the same things that I don't like as an individual, I am desirous of when it comes to business transactions, and protect us from AML and all of that, right? So it's mixed feelings on this one. I don't think the jury is out on this yet.
Okay.
Anton, what do you think? Should we ask about the summer in Dubai?
You're reading my mind, Demetrios, so please, yeah.
What are you gonna do for the summer? What are your plans?
This summer, I bought a one-way ticket.
You know how this usually ends then,
Actually,
the family's moving.
Moving to Dubai.
No, actually, I had
I also bought a one-way ticket when I came back here.
Yeah, yesterday, actually, funny enough, I was in the elevator and I was chatting to this guy, and I'm one of those guys who's very friendly in the elevator, all right? And to some people, maybe annoying. And we were talking, and he was telling me, yeah, these 2 floors, the restaurants, they're mine. And when I came to Dubai 26 years ago, I also came with a one-way ticket. Since then, I've never left. Really encouraged me, right? Because of the ecosystem here, there's so much innovation that we could do as Mamun.
Yep.
And that really excites us, and the great minds that Dubai attracts in the industry. And for me, the summer will be mainly just pushing the envelope for Mamun in the UAE.
Okay.
So no big summer vacation plans, but hey, the occasional visit to the beach. Why not? All right.
And can you tell us a bit? Do you plan to attend any events in the region or globally? And maybe for the audience, for myself as well, very curious. Is there a Web3 event in Oman that we should know of, or potentially we should visit? And if not, who should be the one doing the first?
So
Mohammed.
hopefully Mamun. Yes.
I hope I invited ourselves as well with this question.
In fact, we had an event planned and we had you listed as a speaker. But
I'm
then
good.
we had to reschedule.
I'm reminding you now, but
Yeah. I have not forgotten. I'm just tying some loose ends.
Yes.
All right. And I'd like it to coincide with the launch of our layer with Fuse. So I feel that timing would be good.
Yeah.
So no, up to now, no, there is no real Web3 event per se, that brings the community under one roof. I'd love very much to sponsor that and drive that.
If you have 100,000 active users, wow.
Yeah.
You can have
Somebody will show up at the event.
An event will show up.
Yeah.
An event will show up in the region, and it will be full.
One of the large mining manufacturers, equipment, what do you call the
miners, yeah.
I forget the name of this huge company.
Bitmain,
sorry?
Bitmain, probably.
Them.
Yeah.
They had a huge event in Oman last year. Huge event. Even I think I was traveling at the time and I didn't have an opportunity to attend it, but a huge event.
Yeah.
Because, before the state facilitated investments by the large mining operations in Oman, there was a lot of guerrilla mining in Oman, especially Ethereum and others. So that was, and then when the change happened in Ethereum, that kind of like.
I think there's not a lot of mining in Ethereum nowadays.
Now less because it's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Not giving financial advices, but yeah.
So there was a lot of guerrilla mining for a very long period in Oman, and the state was aware of it. And actually, in so many ways, they took inspiration from it. And that's why today we're a large mining concern.
I mean, if you can push for the strategic Bitcoin reserve, you will be the toast of the town there.
Look, I'm now focusing on myself and my own strategic reserves. You know what? When you're in an airplane, put mask on self and then others.
Yes.
So I'm kind of on putting the mask on myself part. But,
And it also makes sense for you because you're a credit institution, you can manage credit risk. And you have a way of talking to the regulator and a way to talking to governments and to panels. So this is a very good avenue for you, for you and your company, for sure, and for the region.
I think there is. We should look forward to how Oman will approach tokenization.
Okay.
I mean, I have some ideas. So we're looking at STOs and securities like that. It's being treated as an investment instrument. And the jurisdiction of the space is kind of split between two regulators. I think one of the advantages Oman will have downstream, I think in the UAE you have several organizations and bodies that can be overwhelming and confusing sometimes. But in Oman, I think what we are seeing, what we might think is a disadvantage could be an advantage where once there is regulatory clarity, it's just one body that you're speaking to and getting things
We
done.
had a guest who answered this question. If you do not know which regulator you should apply to or use its service, you should go first to a business consultant.
Yes.
What did he call it, the guy?
Uh,
Business consultant, business counsel,
yeah,
or,
something like that.
Mm.
or business advisor. Business advisor.
Yes, to help you navigate.
Yeah, to help you navigate,
the
yes. And
regulatory
and
corridor.
these advisors are also very well known in the region, but
Yes.
there is a lot of choices in Dubai.
Yes, and it can be sometimes an expensive exercise
Yeah.
also, right? So if you can DIY, why not, right? And I think that will be a bit easier in Oman once we have a bit more regulatory clarity.
And you can passport services from
Yes.
Dubai to Oman,
Yes.
or the whole UAE. I mean,
Mhm.
it can be Abu Dhabi as well.
Absolutely. It's one of the reasons where we are making this. We are here to take advantage of the regulatory environment. It's the UAE. I mean, they just opened the Ministry of International Trade, so
Wow.
a body just to look after that. So this is if you're in
So
trade finance.
you're local and international.
Yes.
Yes.
When you want your local, when you want your international, like Anton was mentioning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I remember this conversation we had with Anton the other day, and he really made a good distinction about stablecoin use in the east and in the west. And here we're using it for remittance, cross-border payments and transactions, while in the west it's more like New York, Wall Street style of looking at stablecoins.
Trading, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think this distinction really stuck with me, by the way, because now I pay attention, and you can see what's happening in Africa. I think the Middle East, or the GCC specifically, will do a lot of action on both philosophies. So there'll be a lot of trading, and there'll be a lot of actual, real use cases involving cross-border transactions.
Yeah. And I think also the government here locally is working, and also in the region are working very strongly to enable those real world use cases, let's call it
Yes.
like that, beyond liquidity management and trading. Even Demetrios, you and myself come from trading background, but we can appreciate also as well, the let's say
The second flat sold under how many minutes? Something crazy.
2 minutes actually.
Under 2 minutes, yeah.
So the tokenization platform that we have here in Dubai, I think strongly supported by the Dubai Land Department,
Yes.
enabled sale of the first few properties tokenized.
Yeah, this was with the startup. I forget their name.
Primco, yeah.
Sorry.
Primco, I
Ye-
think it's.
yes, yes.
Primco Mint is the one that's related to the digital
So
asset.
that was very impressive. Sold out very
Super
quickly.
impressive.
2
Well,
minutes, it's strong, yeah.
Yeah. Fractionalized. I think the minimum ticket was like $500 or
Yes,
something like that.
Exactly.
So that's very impressive, right? And there is so much real estate inventory. If you could make it more liquid and make this
Yeah.
decent real estate market be accessible now and more democratized, so that more people could invest, then that really, I thought that use case was really sexy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And more to come. Mohammed, thank you very much for being our first international guest. But I feel like
I
you
love
are
this
here at home. I feel
international.
like you're here at home, to be honest. So really, thank you for everything. First, thank you for your friendship, for knowing you, for knowing each
Likewise,
other.
and I thank you for a lot of your mentorship along the way.
It's always a pleasure to sit down together and talk with you. Hopefully, we have also some conversations with all the three of us together later over shisha and some grill or halloumi, whatever. What in Greek, Cypriot, you want?
Halloumi.
Halloumi, okay. So that we have some tea and
Mint tea.
mint tea. So, Mohammed, really a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
it's
Anton. Thank
it's
you,
been a
Demetrios.
blast, actually.
It's been a
Yes.
pleasure to have
Yeah,
you.
it's fun, man. This is what I love about this town. You get to talk shop all the time, but it's all fun, man.
Awesome, actually. Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the audience for watching. And please subscribe to the podcast, and looking forward to show you the next episode coming soon. Bye-bye.